I decided to take the month of May off completely of social media. No Instagram, no Twitter, no Facebook, no LinkedIn, and I said no to YouTube because all of these things I found were affecting my dopamine levels, meaning I kind of felt like they weren't bringing any kind of reward, and I was sort of seeking more and more in order to feel anything. And I was actually having a really negative experience on those apps. And once I learned about the role of dopamine, and that the fact that being addicted to a screen can actually decrease your baseline dopamine, that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. So I said, let's just cut it out for a while, see if I can sort of restore some balance. Also, just pay attention to what's happening when I do this. So today, after a month away, I am back. And so I'm going to share what I learned when I took a month away from social media. It's not the first time I've taken a break. And I do know in my experience some of the benefits, for example, feeling calmer, etc. I had also started to make some changes earlier this year, such as no phone in the bedroom. It gets charged downstairs. I cannot touch it before bed. It's out of my hands. And when I wake up, it's not within reach. I cannot reach for it. That was one of the best decisions that I made. I also started to remove apps from my phone. I even removed email from my phone because I found myself just compulsively opening email all the time. And I was making these small changes, but stepping away was actually really helpful for me. And I also think a really important thing for me at that time, especially with how I was feeling, and I could sense this description that I learned about with this dopamine. And I think I would summarize my experience by saying it was way easier than I thought it would be. I actually didn't really miss it. In the first few days, I did find myself sort of instinctually, that habit kicks in where I want to reach for it, or I think, I guess I'm not going to find out. So that definitely happened, but I didn't miss it. I didn't miss the platforms, except for this one. I missed YouTube. Also, I found that my idea to give up YouTube for the month, that was because YouTube can also have that effect on the dopamine where I want to watch the next video and the next video, or I just kind of search and I get a little bit sucked into it. That's why I decided to stop it. I will admit that I think 2 weeks in, I realized it was actually a bit of a hindrance in some cases. For example, I needed to learn how to do certain things. YouTube is actually one of my favorite places to go for tutorials, to have someone teach me how you do that thing. So at first I adjusted and said, okay, if it's embedded in a site where it's teaching me something, I'll just watch the video. That is not me being pulled into the YouTube rabbit hole. That's completely okay. Then eventually I thought, you know what? I actually think as long as I have a specific intention, like I go onto YouTube and I say, I want to watch this thing, then that's okay. And I actually really like that balance, because I wasn't just going to browse mindlessly. I don't have autoplay on, so I couldn't get sucked into that rabbit hole. And so that was extremely helpful to have those boundaries, but also allow me to consume some content on YouTube that's also longer form or just with the intention behind it. And that was a decision I felt really comfortable making during my month away. Now, one of the things that I wanted to share was that at the end of the month, I genuinely didn't actually care to get back on. I know some people will step away from social media and they're like, yay, I get to step back on. And I didn't feel that at all. I actually had no desire to actually get back on the platforms. I did, except YouTube. YouTube I was ready for. But all the other ones, I didn't miss them. I didn't miss the feeling I got from them. I didn't miss the pace of them. And that was a really important thing for me to reflect on and to acknowledge for me. When I would go on, for example, Instagram was one that I used to spend a lot of time on. I used to really like. I thoroughly enjoyed Instagram at one point. And it just got faster and faster and faster. And these quick hits, almost all video based. And so the sense you get is more, faster, and what's the other? I made a note here. More, faster, shorter. So it's like the pace of the videos, how long the videos are. So everything was getting faster, shorter, in your face. And the idea is just go, 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 go. Don't think, just consume, go into your kind of zombie mode and just constantly scroll. And And that was what would happen. Although for me, it's sort of had this frenetic energy that it was a misalignment with me and what I was looking for as a consumer, as someone who's going on there. They're amazing content creators, people I really respect, people whose content I actually did miss over the month. But that pace and I kind of clash. And so that was a really helpful thing for me to learn. Whereas when I think about YouTube, it's different. It feels more intentional. It's longer form. Even if it's 6 or 7 minutes, that's still, I think, considered long form content. And you get to kind of dive into a concept. You get to connect with people in the chat. Those were all things that I actually was drawn to. So it gave me that space and time to really consider what platforms align with me and what works well for me. I also have to say, on the creator side, I feel like the apps, that's what they want, is more often. Post as much as you can and you'll be rewarded. Faster, sticky, make it capture people's attention so that you can help us keep them on the app. And that also feels gross to me. Now, let me just say, there are people who are making incredible, I think, authentic and honest content. People who maybe are naturally gravitating towards that mode of creativity. And that's amazing. And I don't want to disregard that at all. But for me as a creator, that message does not resonate. I would much rather create content like this, whether it's a live stream or whether it's a recorded video that lives on YouTube, that maybe teaches someone, etc. And that's where I fit. It's not that fast paced. I also think having that recognition of where do I align as a creator was really helpful, because for a very long time, about a year and a half, I've had a ton of social media guilt. I feel like the creator who is just dropping the ball on my social media game was weak. I used to kind of poke fun at myself, but I was also a bit ashamed as a business owner who is not creating content on social media. It feels like a sin, or how dare you not, create content, short form content. That's what it's all about right now. And you're only creating videos on YouTube and you're not creating any social media content. I was feeling a lot of guilt. And now I don't feel that, because I've recognized what suits me as a creator, where do I maybe fit best, and what feels the most authentic. Okay, those are some of my reflections on the platforms. The thing I did miss, aside from YouTube, is people, because I have made genuine connections on social media. There are people that I like to know what they're up to. I like to see their updates. I genuinely get joy from that, albeit sometimes it's harder to see the people I want to see, because even though I follow specific people I want to follow, the algorithms are starting to feed you what they think you might like, which means you're seeing a whole bunch of stuff you didn't actually choose. And I get why that's helpful to discover new people, but when I go on there, that's not what I want. And so I was actually finding myself getting mad at the platforms and kind of recognizing that in me, that this is not bringing out the best in me. This is kind of causing a more frustrated experience. There are a few tricks that I've learned, and then I think, is this really worth it? Me going through all the hoops of how do I only see the people that I follow and all of that. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to share, and this is the thing I'm most excited about. I started to read a book called Stand Out of Our Light. It's by James Williams, and it's actually open source. And I should have put in the description, and maybe I can add that later. If you look Stand Out of Our Light and actually go to the publisher, which I believe is Cambridge Publishing, you can actually just see the PDF for free. It's open source, it's accessible to people, and it had a real impact on me. And it talks about focus. And so I want to share something from the book, which is 3 levels of focus. So the first is what the author calls spotlight. This is focus where you are doing something. The second is starlight. And this is sort of our guiding values and principles, our goals, the things that matter to us, how we want to live. And then the third one is what he calls daylight. And daylight is really that time and space to reflect and think about what you want. These are 3 different types of focus, and I'm going to talk about each one. And what he describes is that they're all different. So Spotlight is doing. What's the next task in front of us? Starlight is what do we actually want? What matters to us? How do we want to live? What do we care about? What do we want to achieve? And then that Daylight is actually having the bandwidth and the ability to make these decisions and to reflect on what matters. And the thing that I really found so powerful from this book is that he describes how technology interferes with each one of these, but in different ways. So let's start with the first one, which is Spotlight. This one probably seems pretty easy. Also, I see there's a link in the chat, so thank you very much. So Spotlight is the task at hand. And we have probably all been there where technology is getting in the way of the thing that's right in front of us, or the thing we want to do right now. For example, I could be this morning putting together this asset, kind of putting together the scene with the spotlight and this little image. I was getting text notifications that were coming in. That's a very simple example of how tech is directly interfering with our ability to do something. Even just seeing a phone in our periphery is going to be a distraction. When we see our tech, that actually can distract us away from what we were doing. So technology, I think we can all acknowledge it gets in the way of doing. It does that regularly. The next one, Starlight, this is a different impact. This is where the values of the companies running these apps and the tech that we're using is not aligned with ours. You know, in the book, I think he references people don't get up in the morning and think, how many hours can I spend on social media today? We don't think that. We're humans. We have goals. We have desires. We have things that we want to accomplish, things that we want to do, the way that we want to live. And our tech can keep us from that. For example, one happened yesterday. I was last night, I had attended a lesson learning about how to use Discord. And I was learning all these things and I was like, this is so fascinating. And I started to have these questions, and then I was conversing with my friend Keely, and I was like, oh, so how does this work? How does this work? And my partner turns to me and says, I thought you wanted to try to, shut down screens at night so that you can wind down and get ready, which is the thing I intended. It's the way I want to be living. And this is tech directly interfering with it. So what this can do is basically, it's like a GPS that's just bringing us off track from where we want to go. And he does use the metaphor of a faulty GPS. Technology is not guiding us where we want to go. It's guiding us where it wants us to go, which is eyeballs on their product as long as humanly possible. Now, the third type, Daylight, this is that knowing. How do we know what we want? But also giving yourself the ability, and I keep saying time and space, but that really is what it is. Technology consumes our time so much that we actually don't stop and pause and think for ourselves. We maybe aren't creating goals. We're not thinking about what matters. We're not spending time to think about our values. Instead, we often get pulled in by things like moral outrage when we see the news, or when there's technology, that all of the different headlines that are distracting us from actually sitting down and saying, what matters to me? What do I care about? And what am I going to do about it? And so honestly, having this framework, I find it so simple, but in essence, if you think of it as doing, being, and knowing, those are the three levels, looking at how technology is getting in the way of us doing what we want, being who we want to be, and knowing who we want to be. All of those things are connected, and technology's goals are not aligned with that. And if anything, they want our attention. We are in an attention economy. And that was really, really profound. Now, the other thing that I mentioned when I was leading up to this session, so there were a few surprises. And I have to admit, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, that I cut out social media and I was feeling pretty good. I was feeling calmer, etc. But recently, I think it was on Sunday, I had a plan for what I wanted to accomplish on Sunday. And instead, I got sucked into, it wasn't Netflix, but a streaming service. And I ended up watching not even new television, reruns of a show but because of the algorithm, because of the way the tech is designed, it kept me going because that dopamine, I don't want this to end. I'm enjoying watching this. And oh, the next show is going to play, and they know what works. They are appealing to our brainstem, to the lowest part of us, and it works. And so often we feel like I'm stronger than technology and the algorithms, but we aren't a lot of the time. And so they're sophisticated. They know people, they know human behavior, and they know what's going to keep us on their platforms. So Sunday, after basically being sucked in for many hours, I realized, okay, just because I'm not on social media doesn't mean I'm not falling prey to this in other parts of my life. And that was an example of that interrupting, that's the starlight. The reason the book is called Stand Out of My Light is that tech basically gets in the way of those 3 light sources. So it can get in the way of our spotlight, and can get in the way of our starlight, and it can get in the way of our daylight. So I realized I have some more work to do. And that leads me to kind of the next steps. So when it comes to what is next for me, I am not planning to download apps onto my phone for the most part. I'm keeping email off. I'm not going to re-download TikTok. I wasn't on it a lot anyway. I am not going to have my Kat Melva Hill Instagram accessible on the phone. I can get those through the browsers. I'm not going to have Twitter on there. Facebook's been off for a while. I have no intention to put it. That's the one I kind of miss the least. I don't know about you. I'd love to hear from people. Is there one that you just don't even care about? It wouldn't matter if it was gone tomorrow. So those are some of the steps that I'm making, but I think I do need to also have some other boundaries and design my environment so that I am not kind of still falling prey to those. Because even when I did go back on to some of the platforms over the last day or two, I feel that habitual instinct kick in of starting to scroll. And it's like, I just don't want to do this all over again. I need to be more intentional about it. And I know how calm and peaceful it feels without them. So I don't necessarily want to go right back. And I don't, the short answer is I don't totally know what this looks like. It is going to be a continual process that I'm going to have to work through. But I think having that framework of the spotlight, starlight, and daylight, and noticing these things happen are really important. And I think my month away gave me lots of daylight. I was having these realizations. I was thinking about these things, and they were having an impact on me. And if I had not been taking a break or step away or kind of having that kind of dead space to just daydream and wander and, put some ideas together, I don't know that I would have come to that or not. I am an avid reader. I would have been reading regardless. So maybe I would have come across it. Maybe I would have learned it. But I feel like I had a little bit more mental breathing room in order to kind of make these connections. And I'm noticing these and I can name them right away, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to share this with you today, because being able to name what is actually happening, how is tech getting in your way? Is it interfering with you doing something, being who you want to be, or knowing what you want to be? I think those are really important things. Hopefully that gave you something to reflect on for yourself. And if you are someone who wants to reevaluate your relationship with technology, how it might be getting in your way, I hope that that metaphor has been helpful, gives you something to think about. And I would love to hear from you. What are you doing differently, if anything? Or maybe not at all. But this is something I'm going to continue to explore, hopefully find something that is aligned with me. So having that daylight to consider how I want to be, that starlight, and really pay attention to my focus across all areas of my life. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And I'm looking forward to hearing about you and your relationship with social media.